Yes, yes. Welcome to the ancient world of tabletop games. I am Agamemnon from the historical documentary Time Bandits. This is a report from a fugitive. Here's the Pathfinder Beginner Box for the first edition of the game, though it is not the first version of this box. The box cover tells us there's a new book inside. More on that at the end. This box goes for around £30 online, whether new or used. If you see it for 20, it's used, or it is the earlier edition without the new book, possibly both. You shouldn't pay £70-odd for a copy unless you read Japanese, and even if you read Japanese, don't spend £70-odd on a Japanese copy. This needn't be an expensive hobby. The point of picking up a beginner box is to try a game without a legal requirement to invest heavily in hefty hardback rulebooks. Look for bargains. If you can't find bargains, look for alternatives. Pathfinder is a digital rulebook, for example. This box is for First Edition Pathfinder. I won't be buying that, or Second Edition. Have I played the game? Pathfinder has its roots in Third Edition Dungeons & Dragons. I guided players through the world's largest dungeon, and I used Third Edition rules to run that. With a bit of work, you could use Pathfinder to play that dungeon. Yes, I recognise the general system, even if I don't have a full Pathfinder rulebook to hand. The beginner box is more expensive than the D&D starter set, and with good reason. This product is heavier, and that's just from the sturdier cardboard box everything arrives in. The box is somewhat sidelined by the introduction of Second Edition Pathfinder. That version streamlined the First Edition rules in an effort to get players into the game as soon as possible. How soon is that? The age-old battle between those titanic forces, expectation and preparation. In the olden times, our party of adventurers would take to the open road and embark upon a mighty quest to a far-off land, the city. In that city, we'd bounce from encounter to encounter, meeting withered magicians who ran game shops. We'd buy stuff on a Saturday morning, and I'd be expected to run stuff on the Sunday afternoon. Player expectation collided with game preparation. It's easier to get into the role-playing hobby more quickly if you play a description-only game. No figures, no floor plans, just talk. If you buy figures, you pretty much have to paint them, though we have played in games with unpainted figures bought the day before, such was the enthusiasm for gaming. You don't need all the props. Yes, you see a load of props on this channel, but I bought loads of props expressly for this channel. Game videos are visual. Anyway, sometimes it was possible to buy a role-playing item and have players create characters the next day and propel an adventure into existence the following week. Expectation versus preparation. The eternal struggle. This box helps with that battle. You're handed figures and floor plans, and you needn't paint a damned thing. When you open this box, you encounter the dice, plastic stands, and a welcoming mat. The welcome covers a few things that aren't in that D&D beginner box. This product takes a different path. The back of the box recommends 2 to 5 players. I'm struggling to think of the largest game of D&D I ever played. 10-player games, certainly. 12 people around 2 tables thrown together at a gaming club. Oh yes. Maybe 15 people, Dungeon Master included. We never went up to the 20-player limit. Beyond 20 players under Icelandic law, a dungeon bash takes on the characteristics of a government. And that is a role-playing fact. At the other end of the wedge, you tackle the RPG with the only player who turned up. And that's why the box recommendation is for 2 to 5 players. The minimum requirement versus the more comfortable level of 1 game master and 4 heroic or tragiheroic players and their characters. Yet this welcome mat goes a step further, taking a leaf out of solo Tunnels and Trolls adventures and fighting fantasy game books. You, the purchaser, return from a game-buying expedition or rip the box from its brown cardboard shell after a parcel delivery, and you play the game alone. It's an excellent way for a beginner to learn the opening game mechanics. No, it won't be the role-playing experience you get with a bunch of mad players around a kitchen table, but it's a start, and that's the point of the product. This package takes a step up from the D&D offering by welcoming you to a game that contains pre-generated characters and blank character sheets for creating your own fantasy heroes. It's a bold mission statement, welcoming you to the hobby and shoving all this stuff your way. I entered the hobby through arcane means, the sacrifice of a few brain cells, not my own, of course, and the accumulation of more dice than is healthy for the survival of an overloaded floor. There were things like this box before, but I'm impressed and I'm not even going to buy the full game. Let's tackle dice. This is a standard 7-dice set with the inclusion of a dedicated 10-sider as the other half of a percentile pair, so you can roll numbers from 1 to 100 until the cows come home punctured with arrows. These dice are on the same level of quality as the dice you'll find in all those starter sets and beginner boxes. The 4-sider is the most annoying die in any set, not the least loved. The 12-sider claims that title. Heed this advice. Do not buy pin-sharp 4-sided metal dice. If you do, roll them in a sturdy dice tower. Never get them wet, don't feed them after midnight, and whatever you do, don't let metal 4-sided dice land on the floor. Here is a small war that I feel I must draw your attention to. There are all sorts of 4-sided dice. You might be best off with an 8-sider that has 1 to 4 printed on it twice over. Here's the D&D offering. It's a top reading D4. The Pathfinder version is a table-level reader. There's no right or wrong, no good, no evil. I merely point to a minor conflict in design. The war rages away, barely noticed. What are the bases for? Cardboard figures. I've endured supply problems with these bases, so it's nice to pick up a few more inside a box. Any time I've gone to buy Starfinder bases, they've been on offer from America with the usual additional costs. On this side of the Atlantic, it wasn't much easier to go after Pathfinder bases, but it was cheaper than going after the Starfinder ones. I picked up a few packs. Pathfinder and Starfinder may be great, but transatlantic distribution is patchy. The company isn't shy about advertising products on the side of the box, but there's the usual flyer thrown inside anyway, with a plug for joining the Organized Play Society. Create characters according to universally accepted rules, and play those characters wherever you care to go inside that shared universe. I've not tried organized play. The closest I ever sailed to that island was in carrying RPG adventures over from one game convention to another. But I see the value in it for people who find it hard to convert their friends into gamers. Just go where the gamers are, whether online or not, and instantly slot your character into the shared world. The criticism of organized play lies in meeting at a venue and squeezing the adventure into the time available at the expense of role-playing. This is also true of disorganized play around the kitchen table. Players make or break the game. Some players manage both feats in the one breath, usually a dying gasp. On the reverse of the flyer, we see adverts for First Edition Pathfinder. It's still out there. You'll find people playing original D&D out there too, if you can find the books or reproduction copies. Fire up your printer and download scanned rulebooks long out of print if that's your only path to adventure. As for books, we'll start with a Hero's Handbook. This is a weighty box. Everything about it has slightly higher production values than you'll find in the D&D equivalent. The box is sturdier. These books have card covers, bound and not stapled. That's why you're paying more for a box like this and less for a box like the D&D starter set. Don't pay more for the Pathfinder box on the basis of so-called rarity. That way, madness lies. On the inside front cover, there's a character creation checklist. You'll find a glossary of gaming terms on the inside back cover. Immediately, you are plunged into a few pages of numbered paragraphs. If you wish to play this adventure, turn to page 2, but if you'd rather skip it, advance to page 9. On page 9, you have the familiar example of play that fills rulebooks the world over. I think it's a good idea to throw beginner game masters at that starting mini-adventure and to follow up with the regular play example. Then it's on to character creation. If there's anything that bothers me here, it's the old bugbear of readability. Some of the design choices are interesting. Okay, garish. White text on that orange background gets a no from me. Working your way through the book, you'll create a character without difficulty. It's a harsh truth that the RPG world is littered with the undying corpses of game systems that throw everything, the kitchen sink and the spare kitchen sink, at new players. This box attempts to sidestep the problem, and I'd say it does a good job of that. Concentrate on enough material to get you through that first gaming session. Job done. Let's turn to the character sheets. Yes, these are pre-generated. More than that, though, they are illustrated with character background information on the back cover and with explanatory sidebars to the main character sheet. Character folios are an ancient idea. Nice to see them back from the dead and livened up a bit. Orange text on a white background? That's a no from me. If you were a beginner, an absolute rookie, even to the extent that you had to share the dice in the box with the other players, for you have no dice yourself, you'd do okay here with the characters on display. The game master waves the box at you, rolls the dice, and offers you a pre-generated character sheet. Instead of saying, "What do I do?" you check out the character descriptions and start making choices. Poor choices, perhaps, but you're on your way. From computer games you may have played, you decide to be a rogue, or you watched a movie and want to wield a sword as well as that actor who trained like a maniac for 6 months of the year. You get by on picking a character sheet with your mighty biceps in action, rolling a few dice. The genius in the pre-generated characters is in the presentation of enough information to whet your appetite for adventure. Not too much information all at once, and no 8-hour-long character creation session that feels as though the torture will end only when hell itself freezes over. But I must not speak of the net incident, a tale too terrible to tell. If you're feeling more adventurous, fill in the blank character sheets. The box holds 4 pre-generated sheets and 4 blank. Why that number 4? For 2 to 5 players, 1 game master and 4 player characters. Is that the best number for a game? 5. The difficulty in assembling a team of players for an RPG session rises, multiplying dangerously as you add more players. I'd say, for the most part, across many game systems and settings, through adventures without number, I've run game sessions for 4, putting 5 of us in the kitchen. In a game with definite character roles, specific functions, you're looking to have a fighter and a healer and a wizard and some sneaky bastard. This isn't the case with a game like Cthulhu or Pendragon. It certainly is the case with dungeon-bashing games along the lines of D&D and Pathfinder. But these games aren't completely devoted to the idea of having one person manage the swordplay and another the healing. 1 game master and 1 player, intense gaming. No one to fall back on for help. 2-player characters, well, they say 2 heads are better than 1, though I played a 2-headed character who was dumb and dumber, and that really is a role-playing fact. With 3 or 4 gamers as characters, there's ample opportunity for solving problems bouncing batshit crazy ideas off each other and off the dungeon walls. That's one of the many reasons games like this are geared to around 5 players. 1 runs the game, the other 4 run amok in the game, an age-old tale. The handbook should be passed around potential heroes in the run-up to character creation, but it's okay if there isn't time for that. Players can survive on the basics. It's the game master who must prepare the spectacle. Speaking of the poor bastard who has to run these games, the Game Master's Guide is the book you definitely don't pass around before play starts. You don't want to ruin the surprises in the adventure that comes with the box. That adventure is short when measured up against the one in the D&D starter set, and that's not a bad thing. Leave the players hungry for more. In my first video in this series, I said that I'd like to see something specific in a new edition of D&D. Right there in the DM's guide, a few pages introducing the game and a starting adventure as the opening feature. I repeat that here with reason. This Game Master's Guide drops the GM straight into the adventure, complete with maps and diagrams to give the starting gamer a feel for what an adventure looks and plays like. And then, after that, there's a section on how to run the game, so there's already an impression of how things work before you read on to discover how things work. There's enough material in the book to guide you through what happens next. Paizo produces a few free files related to the beginner box to steer you in the direction of high adventure. Where are the unexplored vistas? Out there. Go and find them. Return with tales of what you saw and of what you did. To aid in knowing what you saw, the box provides a double-sided map. One side is of basic terrain. Yes, you can draw jagged spike traps on that and wipe the bloody teeth off later. The other map side is of the dungeon, which I won't spoil here. Whether you play the named pre-generated characters or your own fill-in-the-blank creations, there are plenty of adventurer tokens to see you through. They are officially called pawns, which automatically gives me a flashback to playing in games that used chess pieces as stand-ins for figures we hadn't bought yet. If anyone accuses you of playing a cardboard character, there may be some truth in it. I like these, scarcity of bases aside. You don't have to paint them. Painting lead or plastic figures is a hobby unto itself. These cardboard versions spring to life straight out of the box. I've left the extra book, the new book, until last. This slim effort, running to 18 pages with the covers, isn't worth buying a second copy of the box for. If you have the earlier printing of the box, without this extra book, just head to the Paizo site where you'll find a free download. The transition guide is there for you once you've played starting characters through the first 5 levels of progression. There are 2 main areas of discussion in the book: what was left out of the starter version of the game with what to expect when advancing to the full rulebook, and how to adapt an adventure written for full rules so that it can be played using the starter material. This transition guide has an online element to it. Once you've tackled the beginner box, what then? Use it to play the online element. Download an adventure called Master of the Fallen Fortress. That adventure and the downloadable mini-adventures called the Beginner Box Bash Sessions will extend the life of the Beginner Box. And a short life it is, unless you move on to Pathfinder First Edition or make the easier jump to Second Edition. I bought the box for a series on beginner boxes and for the dice. The map is sure to come in handy, and I'll put those pawns to use. Next in the series, Starfinder. Why mention that here? You needn't spend a fortune on this Pathfinder Beginner Box. With the advent of Second Edition Pathfinder, this First Edition boxed set will fade from view as stocks deplete. The Starfinder version contains much of the information here, almost word for word, with occasional reskinning and retheming from a fantasy setting to a science fantasy setting. There's little point paying over the odds for this box when that box does almost the same thing. I see 7 Pathfinder boxes total on sale online after a quick search, and at least 18 Starfinder offerings from shops, and those shops are selling more than 1 box each. Don't sell arms and legs to buy mass-market products that are near the end of a print run or out of print altogether. If they are that rare, do you need them? The rare things you look for in the RPG hobby are those moments that emerge in play, lighting the world on fire with the fun to be had from them.